ready to start. Talking about Meytal Blanaru, let me tell a little short biography. Meytal is a choreographer and dancer. Since she has created her first solo Lilly in 2008, her career has been marked by the creation of Fathom High, a movement technique inspired in Feldenkrais method and dance. And as an artist, she has created several solos such as Aurora, the trilogy Sand, Anitya and We Were the Future, and more recently, Undivided. She has collaborated with Samuel Lefebvre with the group Entours, Clara Fury, and Martin Kilbady, among many others. Meytal is also a Feldenkrais certified teacher and teaches dance workshops based on this method as well as Fathom High. So Meytal, let me start with that question. What is Fathom High?
Fathom High is somehow an ongoing research around how to apply principles from the Feldenkrais method into movement, into dancing. I feel a strong sense of deliverance in bringing this beautiful method into the dance community. Maybe it would be nice to share a little bit about what is Feldenkrais for the people that might not have not met it yet.
I was going to ask you already because I know like this word is going with you constantly, and I'm also even myself very curious about your approach and your understanding of Feldenkrais, of course. Tell us, please.
So, in a nutshell, Feldenkrais is a method that starts to open and destabilize movement patterns, this patterned way that we move, and helps to create new pathways, new ways of moving. I've seen remarkable things happening in Feldenkrais, and you almost grow used to seeing things that in the past you almost define as, miracles or out of the ordinary situations. But in fact, this system really understands how to harness the brain and the nervous system into the body in order to overcome any kind of limitation. So it's basically a way to tap into our limitations and to the things that hold us back, and to find creative ways to and really non-violent ways also. That's the thing that I find the most beautiful, to start to kind of play around and mess around with the system so that the whole structure of how we move starts to kind of break down, and we can start to find new ways of doing things. And for me, this practice, Feldenkrais, had really changed my life. I can't begin to express on how many surfaces it had changed me, and somehow this work is really precious to me. So after I saw how useful it seems to be physically, how free I feel within my body after I practiced Feldenkrais, I became very curious to see how to start to bring this work into my dancing. And I took 1 year off from projects or from dancing professionally, and I took the time to really dive into the work, into Feldenkrais.
Let me tell you, this sounds very brave from you to do it, to take 1 year off from projects to dig inside into your own journey.
I was just, it was too interesting. But at the time it really, something that really grabbed me, and I felt a strong sense of potential there. And it was also a wonderful time to be able to work on my own and to develop somehow something of, I never intended to teach it somehow. It was never something that I saw at the end of the line getting there. It was really a curiosity that moved me ahead in this direction. And somehow I just took along a lot of time to practice Feldenkrais and then to improvise and to try to bring really principles from the Feldenkrais method into movement. And I started to create this coordination games and these different tasks that starts to get our perception a little bit lost inside what we do, which is a wonderful state to work from. But maybe maybe I'm jumping a bit ahead inside the conversation to
No. It sounds wonderful. Actually, like you are already telling deeply things that you are thinking. No. Beyond that, because I would like still to get back to that point, of course. But since now you brought up the subject of the technique or the Feldenkrais method, I would like to ask you, like, if you find any other, if there is any other techniques or methods which you learn and still you find interesting in your daily practice, in your present practice.
Yeah, mindfulness. Mindfulness and Feldenkrais seems to go hand in hand and seems to be an application of the same idea through a different, as far as I see it, of course, it's through my perspective, but I find a lot of similarities in terms of how these methods bring us to be more present inside what we're doing and more engaged. And somehow there's also Bates, which is a method that works on the eyesight, which is a little bit like Feldenkrais for the eyes, I find.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And all of it is extremely instrumental for me to enrich in the experience of Feldenkrais somehow and Fathom High.
Yeah, wow. You seem to be to travel deep inside the human being, Meytal, in your own personal dance approach. I love it. I know you since many years ago, actually, and I remember even seeing you performing. Actually, I could sense that kind of depth in your approach. How would you explain that journey, that your relation with the dance? How would you explain that depth that is very typical of you?
Well, thank you, first of all. I think you might have seen something there before I ever imagined something. But I think, as I mentioned a bit when we were talking, the two of us, I think that for me, there was a moment of a decision after a couple of years in a dance company that felt not a healthy dancing environment, that I'm not, I actually, that was somehow also a moment that became very instrumental for Feldenkrais to step into my life and my practice, because I decided I'm not doing this way any longer. I'm not. Unhappiness doesn't seem to be worth, it just doesn't seem to worth it. I really remember the feeling of going into the studio one day and just not feeling like moving at all. And I think that this is something that now I find extremely, and I really, when I teach, it's one of the main, it's funny because the work might seem quite, never mind, but there's a lot of focus in the work about the joy within moving. And I think that if we are thinking of longevity and a healthy practice, and also what is dance bringing to our lives on a much general scale, I find it the first thing that I hold dear is to feed my love for moving. And the moments that I feel that I don't feel it, I also allow myself to take a step back, and I allow myself to be silent if I don't feel like creating, or if I don't feel like doing, or if I don't feel like practicing. I feel that it's something that for me has to be alive with the possibility to step toward it and to step away from it, so that I can keep on choosing it on a daily basis and not feel that I'm somehow taking on something that I have to do. So somehow for me, after years of spending as a screw inside a machine that for me works with the wrong focus in mind, I decided I'm not doing this any longer, and I vowed to myself not to step into the studio unless it's with kind people and with a good intention to focus on the work and to do well, somehow to do well on the personal level. So then I became extremely selective also. I decided I'm not going to make this my earning. I'm not going to make this my livelihood, because I want to be able to choose what I do. And as a dancer that engaged with people, I said no to many things. Wow. And I said yes to the things that excited me and that felt that I want to be, that I could stand for this concept. Because so this is more about my path as a dancer, and somehow it's interesting because before Feldenkrais came into my life, I never imagined I would create somehow. I never had that spark, or I never envisioned myself creating work. And in both of the, now when I created my last solo reign and also in Aurora and in Lilly, I also took every time 1 year of a movement research before creating the piece somehow.
Wow.
So it's been an incredible journey, and for me somehow that was the most favorite part of creating, having that moment, that year when I keep on being like in a Feldenkrais boot camp a little bit, doing a lot of Feldenkrais and improvising around it a lot. And I really love this feeling of, you know what I mean, when there's that feeling of of continents moving underneath before you even know what you're going to say, but you feel that things are starting to align. So I feel I'm saying all of this because it seems to me important to reconsider all of these aspects of producing, because I think that we're quite aimed on producing nowadays. You know, we need to justify our doing and keep on handing over results somehow. But at least in the eye of Feldenkrais, for example, a child, the longer time spent in each evolutional phase, the more option that person is going to carry with him to the next phase. There's a lot of value, at least through this work, to having time spent almost aimlessly.
Let me tell you that I find a lot of wise comments in what you say, honestly, because it is a very mature position to decide, or to be able to decide, to be able to dare to decide what you're going to do with your time in front of the dance field. I mean, you said several things which I find very important. I mean, new ways of movement. You said healthy environment, which is something like we all, I think, we know what you are talking about, and I think it is very important actually to be able to filter actually what is the healthy environment or not, and to able to decide if yes or not to join. You said love for moving, something that sometimes maybe someone might feel which this is lost. And furthermore, to learn to say no. Sometimes it is like an important thing to learn to say no to certain contexts.
Yeah, so that we can see what we want to say yes to somehow. And then when we say yes, we feel that we give our all to it somehow. It's a different engagement, I find. But it's not that we have to say no. I think that it really depends on what resonates right with us, of course. But I think there is all that pressure sometimes. No, if we get accepted into something in an audition, if we, you know, we got that opportunity, but maybe that person is not right for us, or maybe the working environment is compromising, and I really don't see why these should be things that we agree to take on. I really don't.
Oh, no, clearly, and I think it's understood and very respectful and lovely comment. Let me a bit step out a little bit of this, because there is several subjects I would like to talk, but there is something quite simple, and it's a question for me. It comes like, how often a dancer should train? Let's say the traditional way, training 8 hours per day, or just enough to get to the point, because it sounds sometimes to be clever enough to get there, or should we spend 6 or 8 hours per day training?
It seems to me that it kind of depends on how we spend that time. If we spend that time doing automatic movements, for example, when we repeat the same actions over and over again, but we engage our body exactly in the same way, then oftentimes I feel that might not be the most efficient way. Because, for example, if you look into movement patterns and into the way that we engage with our body, the way that this system works is that oftentimes we activate the same movement pattern, but we expect a different result to come out, which doesn't make sense. It's just not the way that it works. So somehow it seems to me that there's so many ways of doing things, and the question is what sparks up curiosity, which I feel is one of the most important motors in self-practice, and what what gets us to play somehow. And I don't know, this is something that I've been really focusing on. I guess I'm not really answering your question still, but I think that the best is for each person to listen to themselves, but I think it's nice to also start to question the construct of a practice, because usually we take that time, which is somehow clean time, you know, we separate practice from life. We have the feeling that we need to step out of our ordinary life in order to practice. And then it's a space that is somehow more neutral, or it's a space that also in some ways might disconnect from other aspects of our life that could feed us. So somehow through this lockdown, I've learned, having a 4-year-old son at home with me 24/7 and needing to find a way to practice, that life and practice seem to go quite well together when there's that clarity in mind. So I found myself dancing, doing like Dance Me to the End of Time of Leonard Cohen all through cooking and cleaning a kitchen for an hour and a half. And I was dancing the whole time. And somehow playing with my son around and going out and playing around with him, but practicing or walking around and connecting. I think that there's a lot of freedom and a lot of subtleties that, and kind of surprising elements that could spark up when we break down a bit all this expectation and this holiness, this holy grail of the practice, and we bring it into practicality and into life in a way that can feed us, and in a way that also can really integrate into all of our parts somehow, if it makes sense.
Yes. A lot. Just a quick reminder for all our participants and our attendees. Remember that you can keep on posting and writing your questions to the chat that you see below here in the Zoom platform. So at the end of this conversation, and we will get back to those questions for Meytal to answer. I know, like Meytal, more or less you answer, but still I would like to ask you, do you dance for yourself or you dance for others?
Oh, I dance for myself. And the moment that I stop dancing for myself, that might be the moment that I need to stop dancing.
I hear sometimes.
I love dancing for myself. I put some music and I go wild. And it's so great. No one's watching me. Isn't that a freaking relief? We're so bound as performers to having this outside eye. It's a relief to have that space for me. Just to, yeah.
Good. I feel your passion when you say all that thing. Like it's clear, actually. Same when we see you performing. Now, coming back to a global perspective, because you have been dancing here and there, traveling a lot. And then I would like to know, how do you perceive the current context of the contemporary dance and the performing arts, globally speaking?
You mean during the pandemic?
No, like globally, I would say, like, how do you perceive how it is the context of the contemporary dance, but already from before the pandemic moment, let's say nowadays.
What do you mean? Like, what's my impression of it somehow? Or
yes. What is your impression? Wow. How do you see?
I'm not so sure. Honestly, I'm pretty naive. I come to those things and I kind of see things, and I'm not too quick to form an opinion as much as I might need to or should be. But I think, again, for me, maybe the thing that might be the most, the thing that I've noticed the most when I was teaching was that this kind of work of taking the time to connect to ourselves seemed to be quite something that people are thirsty for. And that makes me wonder the lenses through which we meet dance all around somehow. I think that for me personally, one of the reasons that Feldenkrais was such a choice that was so meaningful for me was because I spent my entire adult life spending in front of mirrors and all the time noticing how I look from the outside, and somehow being so intrinsically so deeply connected to how I should feel and how I should look like and how I should move. And somehow Feldenkrais breaks down all of these constructs because it starts to speak of a very singular imprint of self, of how we each organize ourselves. And then it becomes a whole other game ball of starting to understand ourselves. And somehow, yeah, I think that we miss as a community the ability, as I said before, to take a step back and to spend more time with less results or feeling less pressure to have results, allowing ourselves more to be in the current step where we are. It seems to me always that we are so tuned to where we want to get to somehow. Whether we're talking about career-wise or production-wise or practice-wise, personal dancing-wise, on any aspect, we seem to have such a strong image of a place that's already 10 steps away, or I don't know how many, but the only thing where we are is now where we are, and the only next thing we could do is take the next step. And Feldenkrais somehow really, for me, is a way to really connect to where I am now and the only thing I can actually work with. So I feel that we miss somehow perhaps some practical tools to work more concretely, each person with their own bodies, to develop their personal ways with things, rather than taking on forms from the outside of how they should be.
I agree totally. Let me tell you, I admire very much your dialogue you have with yourself, your honest, sincere dialogue you have with yourself, because I think sometimes we are lacking a little bit of this. One of the many things I admire from you, of course. And then talking about this dialogue with yourself and enjoying so much dancing by yourself too, with yourself, I would like to ask you also, what does being a teacher mean to you today, Dan? What does it mean for you being a teacher?
Yeah, it does mean a lot to me. I somehow see all of these channels as one, whether it's performing or teaching, or not in the sense that teaching is like performing actually, but just in the sense of the communication with others and with the ability of passing forward something that means a lot to me. Because this practice in Feldenkrais is at my core somehow, and to be able to share it, and oftentimes it seems to resonate with people, or to offer them something that seems to them to feel profound. That for me is a lot. It makes me feel like I've done something useful with my time here. So somehow I feel it's, yeah, how to say this, when someone writes me now, for example, throughout this pandemic, it's so isolating, and oftentimes this format of where we are now all together is quite something to take in or to get used to. But for example, even online, I've managed to find such closeness with people through this practice, through teaching regularly and really feeling, for example, I teach regularly every week, and there's really a strong sense for me, a strong sense of community that is forming there, and a space that could potentially feel quite intimate. It's not that I'm advocating for online activities. I think that the moment that we can open our doors, I'm going to be the first one to run out and shout and wave my arms in the streets, for the happiness of being able to share a space together in real life.
I was going to ask you about that. How about this online trend that we have nowadays, or need that we have because of the pandemic? But it seems like you are handling very well.
Well, it's just that I'm lucky, because this practice in particular, you know, even when I'm there in the studio with people, I never show anything. I never show when I teach. I never show or I never demonstrate anything. I only speak, and I try to dance a little bit when I really feel like it and I can't stand still. So I kind of, but I try to do it on the side. I don't, because it's really the nature of this work. It's about listening to yourself and finding your ways. So I don't see the point of, it's really counterproductive to somehow push to this way of learning, which is more visual. It's much more about the way we sense ourselves. So somehow, you know, since when I'm in the studio, I'm just a voice. And now when I teach online, I'm just a voice, but I'm with everyone at their home. And I have to say that there's something quite, for me, quite precious there.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. No, I have to tell, like, I'm admiring your positive way of approaching, and especially I have to say, and this is also surprising, guys, for everyone to know, like, Meytal Blanaru is one of those persons doesn't have a smartphone.
Yeah.
So this is incredible, because nowadays is one of those things like you could never imagine, right? This is it. This is a reality. Here we have an example of how even without the smartphone, you are doing very well at that human level, at that human connection with people, even in those difficult times. Very good. I would like to ask you also, like, how do you imagine the performing arts in the future? That would be a question also actually personally coming from my personal approach, because I'm interested of those who, like you are busy with the teaching but also performing, and I would like to know, like, what is your vision, if you have any, about the future context?
But what do you mean, somehow how I would like to see, where I would like to see it going, or what's my feeling of the trends? Or
I think rather like what would you like it to be? I would be more interested of what do you think it's going to happen, even if you don't want it to happen.
Oh wow, I have to tell you, I have no idea. I wonder, because somehow I'm a bit concerned about how Facebook and this attention, our shrinking attention span, seem to be influencing probably our capacity to attend things, including a dance show. And this means I wonder what it means, because I do have the feeling that it would speak, or it would somehow oftentimes push us, even though if we don't want to go there, and maybe we choose as creators not to go there, but somehow it would push us to feel the need to help people zap through a dance performance in the same way that they zap through Facebook. And that does concern me, because I have the feeling that we have to counteract something. And I have to tell you also that I'm working now on a new creation, and somehow the heart of the creation is about creating a dance performance with the public. I found the time to do it, I must say, but yeah.
So you are right now under creation then?
Yeah, we are now in creation, and we are doing our best to. The whole idea of the process was to go out every week to different communities, where communities that don't have any experience with dance, and to go out and to really try to get to people that don't know dance, so that we can meet their perspective that might seem, for me, would be very precious, and you know, meeting that thing with that freshness that could come. So why did I mention this? I lost my trail of thought somehow.
Well, the thing is, like, in any case, I would like to remind everyone, sorry, yes, you got it back?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you want to go first, or are we afraid that I'm going to lose it? Because I could. My brain seems to like to get whatever it can. That there is something that I quite wonder about the connection with the public throughout the process of dance making somehow, because the reality within the field usually, of course it's a huge generalization, but still, is that usually we create in a very hermetic environment. When we work on a piece, we don't share it with publics. We maybe invite friends or colleagues or people from within the field. And when we perform it, usually the public sits quite distant. And after the show, you don't always have the space to meet people. And even if you do, oftentimes it's too late because there's already such a gap that persisted in all the phases of the creation. So the people wouldn't really come up to you to speak. And somehow for me, that kind of beats the purpose, because we're not writing for the drawer. We're doing this to share this with people. So then what is the space of sharing the work with others throughout the process? And I feel that also as a creator, it puts me in a more of a vulnerable place if I don't share what I have to say when it's ready, but I allow myself to be seen with all of the insecurities of the process also. And somehow, yeah, I feel that what I'm trying to do now in this creation, despite the COVID, challenges, is to create a different environment where we could somehow engage with people on a more personal level, because I feel that this is what we're missing for me nowadays. And maybe going back to your question of why teaching is important for me, I feel that this is the point, because nowadays you see human contact or human connection, more precisely, kind of dripping away through social media and the way that we engage with one another in such a non-personal way, that if a dance show stays within that frame of being non-personal and communicating in a non-personal way, then I feel that I have no outlet to kind of get in touch with people. And that would be that could be a sad prospect as far as I see it.
Wow.
So
it makes a lot of sense, and let me tell you, I agree with you totally in that approach, because I am also the ones that finds an important event of making people come and to meet each other in the theater for a reason. Actually, that's why we are there present. That's why we are not working on cinema whatsoever. Meytal, I think if you don't mind, we are going to pass already to the questions, because I see already people interested in asking things to you. Yes. So if you want, actually, the first question I see here, it comes from Maria Laura Galvano. And she says, where did your first approach to Feldenkrais come from?
Meaning, what is my first meeting with the method?
Well, I suppose, yes. Where did your first approach to Feldenkrais come from? Actually, probably I can imagine, like, how did you meet it and how it comes that you started doing it, and how was that first meeting each other, Feldenkrais, Meytal Feldenkrais?
Well, it wasn't a love at first sight, if that's the question.
Wow. So you like the forbidden things?
What? So
you like the forbidden things?
No, but it's just that it wasn't something that really, let's say like this. The first time I met Feldenkrais was when my back got stuck when I was dancing in Vertigo in Israel. And I went to a private Feldenkrais session with the person that then became my teacher and my master, Eilat Almagor. And I remember being there through the session and really not understanding what the hell are we doing here. It just seemed so random or so small. The thing is that I didn't have the sensitivity to sense what's happening, because I was not on the scale that really. I left the session and I told myself, okay, well, whatever, and I moved on, and I carried on with my day. But then I noticed that my back got much better. But then the thing that happened was the day after, when I went to do, at the time in the company, we were doing ballet classes in the morning. And I have to tell you, I think until the end of my days, I will not forget the feeling in my body. I even remember where I was standing in the room throughout the class. Like I have such a strong memory of this, of all of this, because I never felt so free within my body. I felt like I could do whatever I wanted, and this was never my experience. So never my experience within.
That sounds like a dream for a dancer, actually.
Yeah. So I obviously I realized that there's something here that I don't understand, but it's worthwhile my time. So then I started to take classes and to get to know the work. And then gradually I started to really become quite devoted somehow to this practice, and then learning it and so on and so on. But the first meeting was quite surprising, because I think that there's something in this language that is quite small and subtle. And you know, if we come from such a background of a lot of sounds, it could seem like an empty, like a little silent. It takes a moment to get used to this range. But now for me, that's the whole, you know, that isn't that the purpose of it all? Like, what if like the most interesting thing in the world, or a lifetime of research, could just be this of the arm getting here, and but this is what happens in Feldenkrais. You dive into the things, and you start to trip within your sensations inside it, and everything keeps on changing. And it's a bit like I never took like hallucinative drugs, but I have a feeling that there's something there.
Wow, amazing what you say. Seriously, fantastic. I love it.
Maybe
let me go to
the drugs remark. I think that might not be too related to the conversation.
No, well, yes, actually, yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, probably it's the same kind of objective at the end. Meytal, here we have another question from Luca, and he says, how do you think about the relationship between your dance performance and costume, the lighting, objects, in expressing what you want to express?
Okay, so what's my approach to other tools that are not the movement, basically?
I think so. I think it goes this way, the question.
Yeah, for me, I quite enjoy, and I do this quite intentionally in all of the works so far, and also in the next one, is that I try to cut out any other possible tool that could come to my help, you know, whether it's lighting. So for example, in the last few pieces that I created, there's no changes of light. The lighting is open from beginning to end, and there's never darkness. It's just a lit room, basically. Because I feel that I wish to bring more and more the focus to all of these nuances that we work with. And really, I do honestly find a lot of magic, or let's say, I feel that the ability of the body to speak, and the state and the presence to give such richness is something that I really want to stand for. And for this reason, I think I always enjoy taking out of the equation other tools that might help accentuate those things. But if I take them out, I need to really focus on bringing, or on offering those things through the body and through the state and the presence.
Yeah, again, it makes sense, because even myself, I can tell, like, sometimes I find even more interesting to follow a rehearsal than the actual performance with the lights and the costume and so on, which sometimes, it's of course not all the cases, but sometimes even distracts from the main objective. Let me jump to the next question, please, and it's from Nuria Marti, who says, how do you imagine actually the future of the dance in this presence of the screen online? But I think more or less you already answered. Probably I think you could add up to this subject, if you see like this is gonna be there. I mean, the digital aspect comes to stay already with the performing arts.
Yeah, well, when it comes to performing, this kind of scares me. If I don't get to meet people, I don't want to. I don't see any reason in the world. You mean I'm separating, because I think that for teaching, for example, when I teach Feldenkrais classes, many of my students can't follow, live in different places, some in Canada, some in Europe, some in Israel. So somehow they can follow the work now, and we can really have an ongoing weekly practice, which means a lot to me, as well as I think that for some of them. But if we're talking about performing, ouch, that seems to take out the
painful. I think we can understand your facial expression. I think it's clearly Ouch. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Unless it is a performance made to be online, right? Here we have another question from Zoe Coudognan. She says, is the position of the audience frontal or circular important for you when you are performing on a stage? And she adds a little bit saying, in order to share with people, bring the audience with you, or allowing them to dive into this experience with you.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because we've just been battling with this question in the new creation, in trying to figure out how to engage the public inside it. And it seems to me more and more that there's just, I'm talking only for my work in particular, but I think that there's a very different value to sharing it. But actually, I'm not sure, because Rain, my last piece is frontal, and it needs to be so, and it's very right for that piece to be frontal, and I feel that there is a very personal connection that still happens there. But yeah, honestly, I'm not so sure. I think it kind of depends on the piece. It depends on the way that we would like to engage the public inside the show. So I have a hard time.
Okay. Well, it's somehow answered, of course. I think we have two more questions, and probably for today that would be it, because I think we are closer to. But I think it's never ending learning from you or sharing with you conversations. It's amazing, I have to say, Meytal. I really thank you a lot for this. There is a question actually from Alan, and he says, like, do you think your son or daughter, he says, will be dancers in the future? In that case, what would be, honestly, your advice to them?
Yeah, I saw someone writing this beautiful question of what would be your advice to your younger self. Is this it?
No, it's not that one. This is another one. But that would be actually talking about your son or daughter, which is a son, I think.
A son, yeah.
Yes. So imagine your son comes one day, he says, Mama, I want to be a dancer. What would be your advice to him?
Advice to him?
Well, don't do it.
Why?
No,
I wouldn't. I would never encourage him to become a dancer somehow, because that's my thing. I don't know if it's his, but somehow, if it would become his thing and he would come to me, and I don't think he would even come to me. I think he would just go and do it, But somehow, it seems to me that as dancers, when we're talking about being performer and being engaged with choreographers for a second, it seems to me that oftentimes we pass on the how do you call this thing that makes the horses, that thing that you hold that makes the horses, the wagon go?
Yes, I don't know how it is called in English, but I think we get it. We'll get it. Yes.
Yeah, that thing. So we go around with it in space, looking for someone to give it onto, as if a choreographer could then help us. As if a choreographer can then help us grow or go somewhere. And I think that for me, there was a moment in time when I realized that my meeting with choreographers is here to help me gain new perspectives, but that they are not responsible for my growth. So it's not that I need to wait to be discovered, or to wait to be seen, or to wait to be working with one person or another, to be busy and doing my own path. And I think this is very important, because I think that those moments when we choose to perceive that it's not within our hands, the path that we make, and our responsibility on growing within our artistic path, I think that this is a moment that that something very profound is lost, in the sense of where we aim ourselves, where we take ourselves somehow. And that to me seems quite important, as well as actually, there's so many ways of doing things, but how oftentimes we are so busy with getting a job that we ask ourselves if we want it? Do we go to see dance pieces and we really try to feel what excites us, or what speaks to us as a public? What really makes us want to be moving, and then trying to engage with those people in whom we really believe that they're doing something that makes a difference for us. I think that
it makes sense.
important, because at the end of it, this is how we put ourselves on stage. If we want to, if on the most superficial level, if we want to look good, we need to believe what we do. Otherwise, it's not going to be the best representation of ourselves. So even from that aspect.
Yeah. Well said. There is another question for Mate, and he says, how would you describe the effect of Feldenkrais practice had on the way you listen to music and the way you use music in your pieces?
Well, actually, music influenced the way that I don't know, the way that I'll choose to speak about music and practice for a second, because I do have something maybe more concrete to say there. So sorry, Mate, if it's not precisely your question, but my partner is a jazz musician, and through him I started to discover jazz. And for example, yesterday I sent to all the students that I teach in the Feldenkrais class, I sent some tracks of Brett Maldau, for example, who's a jazz artist, a piano player, that when I built this practice of Fathom High, oftentimes what I did is just to listen to his music when he does versions of songs that I know already from the Beatles, from Radiohead. And somehow the way that he plays with constructs, the way that he breaks down constructs, became a huge inspiration for me in terms of how to. It seems to me that in dance, there's not this concrete language that exists in music. In music, you have there's a lot of tools that come to hand that a musician can use so that they can speak a shared and common language with other musicians. In dance, sometimes we have the feeling that everything is allowed. Everything is as equally valid. But then I have the feeling that when I work in this way, I speak a lot of words, but they don't make sense together. The more that I was able then to create a language that has its marks inside it, just like the way that music does, then somehow I started to have the feeling that I'm starting to form sentences made out of words that make sense together. So that was for me, music has been a huge inspiration, more about the way that I create a language that is homogenic, or that really then could create some kind of a message inside it. For me, I don't know what about how it comes out, or that's a whole other question, I guess.
No. Good enough. Good. There is another question. Sorry, because I'm pushing because the time runs and we will never end up. But it's beautiful to hear all what you say. There is Jacobe that says, do you have an advice to your younger self?
Yeah, I love that question. I saw it popping out there.
I find it also brilliant question. So what Meytal Blanaru would say to her younger self?
Just breathe a little. It's okay. It's going to be all right.
It's easy to say it now, right?
I don't know. I sometimes still don't have a lot of air, but somehow, yeah. I think that there was maybe this moment that's worthwhile mentioning. The moment that I left this dance company that I was in Israel a long time, in a different life somehow, almost.
I remember it.
Yeah, and somehow I stopped dancing, and I really didn't know if I would go back to dancing. And people would ask me what I'm doing or what's my, and I would say I don't know. And I somehow I felt I lost touch with something very basic with this world, and the way that I met the dance world until that point didn't get me excited to be a part of it, actually, somehow. So I think that at the time, for me, Feldenkrais was what brought me back, because and again, as I said before, this insisting on creating a working environment that I could stand for, that I want to stand for. But somehow, for me, this is what I would tell myself don't do shit for no one else and just work, be happy, and don't give up, not to give up on the love for dance, because if that's always a too high of a price to pay for someone else's habits. I find.
Wow. Very wise, very intelligent, very clever answer. And I take it also for myself, because I think it's very beautiful for everyone to hear what you just said. And let me add just a last question. And this one, it comes from myself, and it's out of all this deep journey which we had already with you during almost 1 hour. But I would like to ask you a little bit, because I'm curious, because we are talking always about contemporary dance, and constantly this is the question: what are you doing? Well, I'm dancing. Which kind of dance? Contemporary dance. The question would be, how would you define the current dance format, knowing that contemporary dance could be considered as an obsolete definition? Because I don't know, like saying contemporary dance comes to me in the mind, talking about 80s, 90s, I don't know, something past. How would you define what we are doing nowadays? And especially hearing what you say about living an experience, having a dialogue with yourself, dancing for yourself, making kind of a scan over all the aspects of the dance you talk today. What would be your definition?
Oof, wow. But that's wonderful. I hadn't thought about all of this, but it's so true, because we define the definition of a contemporary dance is somehow based on almost what it's not, rather than what it is. I never really noticed it too much, or I took it for granted. It's interesting to take it to mind.
Sorry to make your life a bit more complicated.
No, it's really interesting. I'm not sure I think that this is exactly the point, though. I'm about to say I'm not sure I know, but I feel that it would be wonderful if we can all say this much more often when we're being asked questions. You know, my teacher, for example, I always tell this, my teacher in Feldenkrais, she always it's not the same situation here, but every time we would ask her a question, she would say, that's an interesting question. And she left us with that somehow. So it seems to me, let's say like this, for me, Feldenkrais and this entire practice is to be a lot within the not knowing. And I think that maybe it's interesting to wait as much as we can with trying to give names to things so that we can see what they can become somehow. Oh, it sounds so pretentious, but I hear myself speaking and it sounds so pretentious. But
it is not.
Really wonder about, and maybe it comes really from my slight embarrassment from really not knowing what to answer now, because I so don't know. It seems to me that there's so many currents, and it's like this huge ocean with so many fishes and and squids and things inside it, and like seaweed.
Let me tell you, it is really okay not to be able to answer, because I don't even myself, and I don't know almost anyone able to answer. But yes,
how would you answer it? But what would you say? What's your feeling to it? Or should I not?
That was a tricky move. That was a trick.
I didn't mean to. I'm really curious.
Well, the thing is, again, like I have the feeling people aims a lot for experience right now. Actually, people wants to live an experience, more like learning a technique or doing a certain kind of dance. It seems like boxing people. It kind of feels like, okay, we are gonna do this or this, and I think we are all trying to escape from this. I have the feeling, and then naming what we do or what we would love this to be. I don't know yet. I don't know which word it could be, but it is related to the experience and the honesty with yourself, as you were talking before, Meytal. Don't you agree?
Yeah, very much so. I find it's a really beautiful perspective, because words can be very limiting, or they could open up spaces for questions. And maybe this is one of the downsides of the name that we currently have, which doesn't necessarily open too many aspects. But I think that this is the place where words can start to really go against us if if we kind of put, if it makes us put things in boxes. At least Feldenkrais is about breaking those places down. So somehow.
Okay. Well, I think it's clearly like Feldenkrais for you, it became like a diamond that gave light to your life. Definitely, I think Meytal Blanaru knew how to jump into this diamond and to make it even shine even more. And really, I'm looking forward actually to see you teaching, because I know you're going to be also in the Table Dance 2021. So I'm also looking forward so much. And I think unless you have anything else to add, I think we are going to end up our conversation here. How fast 1 hour went through.
Yeah.
So you tell me, Meytal, if you want to add something else.
No, but just thank you so much for having me. For me, it's so precious to have a moment to kind of talk about all these things, because it's so often that we brush through everything, all of the, all of the making of all the, whether it's teaching or, and there's just the doing. But it's so nice to have a moment to be with all of these questions together as more as a community, which is something that I think not only nowadays, but in general, I think the terms of solidarity and community within the dance world could be something that we see what we do with, or that there's a lot of work still.
I agree totally. Let me tell you, like you already mentioned a couple of times, this community thing, and I really think it is necessary. In my case, I lived closer by the circus field, how they approach, and the community which is happening in the circus field. And I really believe we have something to learn from there, and it would be much more stronger here. So. Meytal, we have a beautiful end message from Eloy Cojal, who says, thank you, Meytal, and Roberto. Thank you, Eloy, also from being here. Thank you to all our attendees this time. I want to make a quick reminder of the upcoming webinars, which we have tomorrow and after tomorrow. We're going to have a conversation with José López and Francisco Córdoba. Just a quick reminder as well, which the two conversations we had yesterday and today, they are in English, and tomorrow and after tomorrow, they will be in Spanish. So for everyone to know. Everyone, welcome to come. And nothing else. Meytal, thank you very much. I really loved to have this quality time with you.
For me too, Roberto.
And I will see you very soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Okay, bye-bye to everyone. And
ciao, everyone. Nice to
see you soon.
Be with you. Ciao.